Um, this is another video on Radical Chic. And the term Radical Chic, before I forget it, is I think it was coined by a writer, Tom Wolfe. And he coined this term after he noticed that well-off people in, I think it was New York, but in other metropolitan cities in America as well, where the well-off would rub shoulders with the sort of some Marxist ideologues, groups, some radical groups like the Black Panthers, and not exclusive to them. There was a lot of movements like this in the 60s and 70s, and basically he saw what he saw was people basically rubbing shoulders with these neo-Marxists, if for want of a better word, and elevating themselves through them, donating money to them, organising fundraisers for them in their plush apartments, and it possibly foreshadowing the situation we have now, what's called virtue signalling. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I'm very concerned about this. I'm becoming more concerned about it because of it, what I described in the earlier video. The people that the Irish state was founded to serve, to elevate the poor people of Ireland out of the situation they found themselves in the 19th century, during the famine in particular, where the country in the 19th century, Ireland, was virtually the whole country was impoverished, and these people are being demonised now in Ireland because many of them are protesting against immigration because they see their lives, I presume they see their own well-being being threatened, and they probably see that most of the immigration in Ireland is probably professionals, maybe not most of it, but a huge part of it, and professionals are skilled people who perhaps are seen to see as doing better than themselves, and rightly or wrongly they possibly see these people as taking their own opportunities from them. I don't think that would be an accurate way of describing events, but perhaps that's the way they see it. And many of these people are from areas of Dublin in particular that haven't improved over the last 100 years since Irish independence. Despite Irish independence being, it's just one of its justifications was helping the Irish people out of the quagmire they found themselves in as part of the British Empire. There's a British writer named Charles Kingsley. He wrote a children's book called The Water Babies. I think that's what he's actually most famous for now. He was actually an activist, but he held attitudes towards the Irish in particular, probably other people too that were racist then too. So the example of that would be, he wrote a letter to his wife. He was travelling through Ireland, and there was so much poverty there that he was basically shocked. And in the letter he sent to his wife, he described the Irish as human chimpanzees. And he was also what's called a British Israelite, which I don't want to go into, but maybe another video I will, because it's very interesting. Which basically is, I would describe it as a sort of type of supremacist group that it's an ideology. It's not a supremacist group. It's an ideology that imagines the English people, the British people, to be one of the lost tribes of Israel. It's a pseudo scientific ideology, and it's a load of nonsense. But he was one of these people. They still I've actually met them, believe it or not, one or two of them, and they were very nice people. But that's another story. But Charles Kingsley did say something correct, and the impoverished state of Ireland in the 19th century, and that Ireland was probably, there was many people who travelled through Ireland, and what now is called tourists, but part of the financially independent people who had the money to travel in what is as sort of tourists. I think Engels may have been one of them. Like Engels, when he went to Manchester, he there's people travelling through Ireland, and this was a constant observation that the poverty in Ireland was so extreme. And then this was either side of the famine in 1845 to 1849, I think, and then those conditions continued. They improved gradually, but they persisted well into the 20th century. And when I was describing the people that rioted in Dublin in 2023, these are the people that were left behind. These are the people that the Irish state has basically failed, I would think. And they're now in the ignominious position where the well-heeled, the radical chic, the people who are relatively privileged, are referring to them in disparaging ways because they have fears about immigration. And one of my questions is, how do you think these people are going to be assuaged by calling them basically scumbags, basically referring to them as doleheads, smackheads, pissheads? How is this going to win hearts and minds, so to speak? And I'm wondering, are these people are progressives, the new cat? Like, because Charles Kingsley, and this is something that's not understood, Charles Kingsley was a progressive. He was a socialist. He was a Christian socialist. But socialism hadn't developed yet into, that's the earlier form. That's one of the earlier iterations of socialism. It wasn't. This is before Marx. If Marx was around, he's been taught by. He was one of Hegel's students at the time. So, I mean, Marx hadn't arrived on the scene yet. So, this socialism was part of probably a Christian, maybe a Methodist ideology. And Charles Kingsley was of that ilk, so to speak. But his generosity didn't extend too far with the Irish, you see, and that was very typical of the time. The Irish and the attitude towards the Irish is very similar now to what I see the attitude of progressives in Ireland towards the poor. The Irish were seen as, again, a deficit ideology. The Irish were seen as less than. Ireland's dire straits with regards to poverty was seen as a consequence of their own incontinence rather than as a consequence of British policy in Ireland. because the Irish economy was almost completely extraction by the time during the famine. In fact, the famine was basically landlords. They just extracted money out of the country through selling cereal grown on Irish land, and Irish people farming their land, but absentee landlords reaping the monetary benefit of it. So it was impossible for Irish people to raise capital, in particular, save money, and so there was no chance of the country private enterprise becoming a major part of the Irish economy the way it did in other places, what now is called private enterprise. And this was seen as a consequence of Irish poverty was the fault of the Irish, the deficit ideology. And that mentality is unfortunately there again today, but rather than being expressed by the British and the English, it's being expressed by Irish progressives. Because how else can you describe what else motivates terms such as pisshead, dolehead, crackheads, smackhead for people who are just protesting most of the time peacefully against immigration? You might not like the subject matter, the thing that they are protesting against, but once they're doing it peacefully, they should be. It is their right. And I have to say, like, when I was growing up in Ireland, I found it an incredibly boring and mundane place, and I welcomed the opportunity to see people from other countries coming to Ireland in substantial numbers. And I'm an immigrant myself. I'm making these videos from the Netherlands. This is where I live. I live in the Netherlands, and so I'm not unsympathetic to migration. But I also see the pitfall. I also see the injustice underneath it. I came here in 2012, and in general, I was treated well, but I was taken advantage of quite a bit, and I've no doubt some migrants in Ireland are being taken advantage of. But I found that I did experience discrimination against some Dutch people, including people with brown skin, and including people with what we now call LGBTQT++. In particular, I remember when I started working in a particular place, I had to buddy up with somebody for a few hours, and it became apparent during our conversation that she was a lesbian. I put my foot in it, actually. I was trying to make conversation with her, which the Dutch don't do seem as well as the Irish. And I said to her, I was just asking her things like, have you any holidays planned this year? This is the staple of Irish conversation in the workplace. And she says, no, we have a little guy, me and my partner have a little guy, and or no, she didn't mention partner. She said, no, I have a little guy, and he keeps us busy, and we have another one on the way. This is what she said to me. And I made the mistake of saying, oh, you're pregnant, congratulations. And she said, no, I'm not pregnant, my wife is. And I was very embarrassed by this, but I had to give my mea culpas, and she seemed okay, so I just assumed she was okay. But I walked across. I remember coming into the canteen one day, and she was sitting there, and she was eyeballing me, you know. And I can't remember why, if it was because of what I said that time or if it was something else. Because it wasn't, it was very, the manual labourers in the factory, this was a very common reaction from them initially. Stares, you know. They, 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 they weren't, I wasn't welcome there. And not just me, other Irish as well. Their friendliness, if you can call it that, was very, very, it was only very superficial. You could tell they had a problem with us, and but most of that would have passed, but it was definitely there, you know. And there was a lot of mobbing and what's called mobbing in the workplace, and basically setting you up to fail, this sabotage and stuff like this, you know. So, but I understood why as well, because I was invited over here to do a job that wasn't really that difficult. And the company, I don't want to mention the name of the company. It's not far from here where I am, maybe 5 kilometers. But it's a very important tech company, very important. It's possibly one of the most important in the world. They manufacture what's called lithography machines for the semiconductor industry. And I understood its market capitalization until very recently. I don't know what it is offhand, but it went above $1 trillion some time ago. I don't know what it is now, because they've lost some money because they're restricted of where they can sell, because America doesn't want them selling their equipment to China, basically. So their market now is very restricted. But they were a $1 trillion company as far as their shares, the capitalization of the company went. So I understood where this resentment was coming from, because my job wasn't that difficult, and a young Dutch guy or girl could have been trained to do it. And this company had the resources to do that, you see. And they were actually paying quite a lot of money through a third party to bring me over from Ireland. They were paying me my salary, and I think they were paying the better part of another 50,000 a year to a recruiter from me. So if I was there for 4 years, so if that was the case, they paid 200,000 for me while I was there. And I never understood why they did stuff like this, but it's very common apparently. Instead of just training somebody and hiring somebody, training, and it's the system that's in place now. It's they can just reach out anywhere to any country in the world and get people they think that are suited to the job, but it's kind of a race to the bottom. So I understood where this resentment came from. So because there is an injustice at the bottom of it, you see, I feel, even though I benefited from this system. And I said in one of the earlier videos, I got burned badly in the crash in 2008. I was left with a lot of debt, so I didn't have much choice but to come here and take the job that I was offered. So I can understand where the system we have in place now, which is, I'm sure people will get sick of this phrase, neoliberalism or globalization. This is the thing that people are causing, is a source of suffering in the world. You see, economic disparity, because this system, I think, came to a crisis in 2008. I think it actually it was the death of this. I think we're entering into a new epoch, a new economic epoch, and very much like what the UK experienced in the 70s. The UK went through a huge period of deindustrialization in the 70s, and they also had a lot of incompetence from the two parties that the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. These are historically the two parties that exchange power, like the Democrats and Republicans. It's always one of them that's in power. And Ted Heath was one Prime Minister, and I think Harold Wilson was the other guy's name. So you had basically a run of bad governments in the UK in the 70s, and they had periods of they had to go to the IMF for a bailout. They had blackouts, minor strikes, and it ushered in. It was coming to the end of something. You see, industrial Britain was the twilight of industrial Britain, and something new was going to emerge, and that something new was the government of Margaret Thatcher, which favoured what's now called what's often called neoliberalism, financialisation, privatisation, and many of the problems in Britain today are a legacy of this. That system, it had its ups and downs in the 80s. There was a market crash, a bad one in 1987, but in 2008 that system, basically called Thatcherism, and then Blairism. Blairism was the continuation of Thatcherism. It's alleged, I don't know, it may be refuted now, but it's alleged that Margaret Thatcher once said that her greatest achievement was New Labour. That was the Labour Party when it adopted her this economic ideology. And this economic ideology is what spread, is the era we're in now. I think that's coming to an end now as well. It's often called globalization. Sometimes it's called the rules-based international order, something like this. But it has, I think most people colloquially, at least when they refer to Thatcherism or Blairism or Thatcherism, it's this is what they mean. Neoliberal economics, globalization. It's coming to an end. It's overheating everything. It's not serving people well anymore. I think it's experienced the classic law of diminishing returns. It served us well for a while, but it's basically not doing what it's supposed to be doing anymore. We seem to be in an era where even if you're on, you have you have a nice income stream, which my income stream is okay. I have an okay paying job. I don't have huge expenses, and but I notice more people, younger people coming through the system now would be instantly getting paid salaries that I had to work 20 years to get, because their qualifications maybe are more contemporary, you see. And I see in Ireland that this kind of in Ireland, Netherlands, I see it everywhere, that you seem to have this system where there's people that are well paid and they're still finding the struggle, so that they're paid well but their money is worthless. And where the thing that are retaining value, or things like property, it's becoming more and more out of our reach. The street I'm on, in 10 years, the prices of houses have gone from €250,000 thereabouts to 600,000 euros. So this is a huge differential in 10 years, and you have to ask, like, this. It's the current system. If you look at the EU, I remember when the EU was expanding and integrating in the 90s. This is what they wanted. Yeah, capital flows, easy capital flows, easy liberalised labour markets. So migration flows. And I remember discussions at the time, back in the late 90s, that they wanted a lot of Americans travel between states for work and to live. So the guy gets a job in New York, he's living in Los Angeles or Chicago or Wisconsin. A lot of that happens. People move around for jobs, and that's what they wanted the EU at the time, Europe to be like at the time. There was a much lower rate of that type of activity. So that's what we have, and I believe that's what's coming to an end. And who knows where it's going to go from there. And I think in the last time in the 70s, the transition from this sort of post-industrial Britain to Thatcherism, it was a rough one. There was, especially when it comes to the miners' strike. There was a miners' strike in England in 1986, I think, or 1984, and it was fairly brutal. It was pretty brutal, and this was the pain of these policy implementations. Possibly the most famous example in Britain. So what can they do? I'm not sure what they can do. They have. They can't. Can they financialise the economy anymore? I don't think so. Can they bring jobs back to? Can they reshore jobs back to Europe? I'm not sure about that either. Europe has kind of let itself down. It hasn't lived up to what it's promised to be. This kind of counterbalance to the United States or whatever power that would take the place of the Soviet Union, China. It hasn't done that. And this begs the question how this will affect the migrant crisis if a Europe that's getting poorer can't facilitate its own people, but continues with migration from other parts of the world. How can how are the ordinary people going to react if they keep seeing their lifestyle diminished, let's say? And if the progressives, the people who are of a progressive mindset or see themselves that way, I mean, if the blue collar jobs, can't come back, I mean, what can happen if their jobs are affected by something like AI? Who will they turn to, or who will they turn against? Will they turn against the poor, or will they turn against migrants, or will they turn against the government, or will they turn against somebody else? And this is my conclusion with regards to radical chic. Radical chic is basically virtue signalling is basically the modern manifestation of radical chic. It's basically a shibboleth for a lot of people to show that they are in this sort of group. I believe this. And I believe, particularly in America, that this type of progressive politics is a sort of trick. It's a trick played against the poor people of the West. In America, poor whites, Britain, poor English people, Ireland, poor Irish people. And the trick is that privileged people in America and Europe, the UK, Ireland, privileged people have created this trick to blame poor people for their moral inadequacy. Poor people get the blame for poor people will pay the price for their conscience. So things like affirmative action will affect poor people. And maybe not benefit people who it's meant. Let's say poor black people might benefit better off black people, but maybe not poor black people, and it definitely won't benefit poor white people. And we've moved away from the class-based politics, in my view, to a sort of identity politics, and that allows the privilege to hold our privilege and push the burden of, let's say, restorative justice back onto poor people. And I think that's what's happening in Ireland today. That's the mentality that allows progressives to call poor Irish people doleheads, scum, smackheads, pissheads, and that's what's happening. So, slán live.